Hey gang, wanted to step in on a quick Newman Family Zoo. May not take long. Just want to drop in and say yeehaw. We had the blessing of the perfect number 10 born into our family over the last couple of days. Charlotte Ann is here, and I think it's awesome. That rounds out 10 grandchildren for Laura and myself, and it gives to us 3 granddaughters. Granddaughters are amazing. Daughters are amazing. You can ask my daughter. Well, might ought to ask my son-in-law. He may tell you she was spoiled a little bit by her daddy, but that's okay. But love those granddaughters. They're a little bit different, and of course, I love my grandboys. They know we know how to roughhouse and have fun and play, and all of those fun things. So this is going to be kind of brief. We did step in and take care of the 2 older brothers now of Charlotte while she was in process. I will put it that way, in a delicate manner. And we went bowling. I may post some pictures on here, and we just kind of occupied them a little bit, took them out to eat twice, and then they were able to meet their sister and then spend the night with us. We tag teamed with the other grandparents, have great in-laws on the other side. And so it was just an amazing, amazing time. That makes me think and made me think while we had them. One of them, the oldest, was very tired. And he was tired by the end of the day, emotionally tired, emotionally spent. And we've got a series of beds in our home that they love to sleep in. And it was actually his brother's time to sleep on the top bunk of the bunk bed. And older brother didn't like that, which that makes sense. And he didn't want to sleep up there. And so I gave him 2 options. He could sleep in the lower bunk, or we have a tent bed that's in the room on a twin bed. It's got a tent that it sleeps in. It's really cool. The kids like it. And I said, you can sleep on either one of those 2 things. Well, he started complaining, started whining. And I knew, well, we're not going to go here. First of all, I knew how tired he was. If you have a kid that you're around and they're starting to complain, they're not wanting to do what you want them to do, check and see, are they emotionally drained? Are they tired? Is there something going on? You can just have a conversation with them before you take it to the next level. And also check yourself. I was pretty tired too, so I wasn't going to put up with whining and complaining. And he's used to being able to whine a little bit with me, and then we talk about it, but I knew that wasn't going to work. We needed to cut this off pretty quickly. So I told him, I said, look, I'm tired, you're tired, but here's the deal. I've given you 2 options, and I'm not changing my mind. Your tears are not going to change my mind. And the Lord gave me the line of the night. I think it was the perfect line of the night. I looked at my lovely grandson and I said to him, would your daddy put up with this? And he said, no. And I said, no. And in fact, here, you need to remember, I am your daddy's daddy. And your dad learned how to do things watching me. In fact, I hope he kind of learned better than me, but he learned some things. And I said, and if he wouldn't put up with that, I'm not going to put up with that. Do you know what I mean? He thought for a minute and he said, Doc, I don't know what you mean. I said, well, let me put it to you this way. How would your dad respond if you told him no, that you were not going to sleep where he told you to sleep? What would he do? And I want you to think about that. He might have learned that from me, because I'm probably going to do exactly what he would do because I taught him what to do. Do you know what I mean now? And he looked for a second. He's a pretty smart kiddo. He said, Doc, I think I know what you mean. I said, so what are you going to do? He said, I think I'll sleep right here. I said, that's a good choice. It was exactly where I had suggested for him to sleep. Now, I tell you that story because it really wasn't that big a deal, but at that moment, it was a big deal because he needed parameters. When you're around your children and you're raising your children, they need guardrails. They need parameters. They need discipline. We are not living in a day, in an age where we can have feral children. You can't have them just doing whatever they want to do, running wherever they want to go. That's dangerous. It really has always been dangerous. The other thing I want you to consider is this, is that children aren't wise enough yet to be able to choose on their own. You've got to choose for them. And there's a lot of things that a child will choose. The child every day would choose the shiny and would choose the thing that glitters. That's not the best thing for that child at every moment in their life. Just like when you go fishing, that fish will take the bait. The world is going to offer a lot of shiny and glittery and bait-filled things to your child. And your child will take the bait a lot of times unless you teach them differently. We needed to teach them that they can delay having a good time. It doesn't hurt to delay anything. We can teach them that sometimes the best thing for them to do is learn to wait because the best thing is down and around the corner. We also need to teach our children that they need advice before they choose, and they need to ask advice of somebody wise. And wise ought to be their parents. Wise ought to be their grandparents or an adult that's around them. In fact, I pray that you would pray to have wise adults around your children, whether it's at church or whether it's at school or whether it is in your home, and that you'd offer them wise advice. And so you need to teach your children, don't grab the first glittery thing that comes up. You need to help them choose. You need to help them decide. We're living in a society today where a lot of people say that it's okay to let a child choose everything for themselves. Well, that's not the truth. The child will choose things that will be harmful for them. Don't give them the harmful choice. You give them the wise choice, and you allow them to understand that you're doing it in love. As you're raising your children, you put some parameters around them, and you let them know, no means no, and we're not going to change our minds. You know, it may be painful for a while to hear a child cry, but those tears, they're not really hurting anything. In fact, those may be learning moments for your child and for your grandchildren. So allow the tears to flow. That's fine. It doesn't have to change your mind about things when you know what's best for your child or your grandchild. Have you ever seen a toddler pitch fit over an irrational thing? I have. Yeah. I've seen a toddler pitch fit because I handed them an ice cream cone because they wanted it in a bowl. Stop and think about that. They got ice cream, but they pitched fit because they didn't want it the exact way I handed it to them. How sad is that? So children will choose the irrational a lot of times, and because of tiredness or maybe they didn't get exactly what they wanted, they'll do those things, but they want those parameters. Also, children will push the boundaries. If you tell a child where the boundary is, like a time for bed or where they can go or where they can't go, they're going to push those boundaries, and then they're going to look at you and wonder, are you going to respond? Are you going to let them know you've crossed the boundary line? You need to be consistent. You need to let them know they've crossed the boundary line, and you need to bring them back. They might pitch fit, they may cry, and they may fuss, but inside, in their psyche, inside, in their spirit and their soul, they're satisfied because they know you love them enough to maintain the boundaries that are there. To maintain and control those boundaries is actually telling your child that you love them. When you let a child run wild, you're really doing the opposite. You're saying, I could care less about you. So think about establishing those boundaries. Now, as a child grows up, you can give them some choices. In fact, we found when our children got to teenage years that our children were going to rebel. Children are going to rebel. They're going to push the boundaries and they're going to rebel. But we found sometimes isn't it a better place to choose a place where your children can rebel? That's what we did. We said these areas are a little rebellious and we're going to give you that option or that opportunity. You know, we had during the middle school years, one of my boys decided he wanted to grow his hair really long. You know, my parents didn't like that long hair. His teachers at that time didn't like that long hair. Some of the people at the church where I was the pastor, they really didn't like that long hair. And my child thought, this is fun because all of these people don't like my long hair, so I'm able to rebel. And in their mind, they thought that mom and dad didn't like the long hair, which, truth be told, I didn't care for it, but it really wasn't hurting anything. If he wanted to have long hair, have long hair. He's a 13-year-old boy. Why not? So I told him, I said, if you want to have long hair, I'm not particularly happy about it. See, I chose the rebellion. But I ask you to do me a favor. Make sure your hair is clean. If you would just do that, make sure you wash your hair. Don't let it be dirty, greasy, and oily and smelly. But if you'll wash your hair, I don't like the long hair, but I guess it's okay. You know what he did? He loved it because Dad didn't like his long hair. And you know what he did? He kept his hair clean. Yep, he washed his hair. Guess what happened though? Oh, the girls loved his long hair. They just thought it was the most beautiful thing. And we had teachers' meetings, and teachers would look at us and say, well, he needs to cut his hair. And I would smile and look at them and say, it's amazing. He's my child. He's not yours. That long hair is not hurting anything at all, and we're going to let him have long hair. And one day, he'll choose to cut his hair, and it'll be his choice. But right now, that's his rebellion, and we're going to let him rebel. There were a lot of kids during those days that were doing some things that was embarrassing. They were doing some shameful activities that their parents really didn't like and they couldn't stop it. But we found something very strange. Our son wasn't doing any shameful activity, wasn't doing anything really that we were ashamed of, just the long hair. And he was satisfied that he had a little bit of rebellion going. But there came a day and there came a moment that he walked in and he said, "Dad, will you take me to the barber shop? I need to cut my hair." I said, "Sure. If you want to cut it, let's go cut your hair. Are you sure you want to cut your hair?" He was like, "Yeah, I need to cut it." And he had a reason that he wanted to cut his hair. So off to the barber shop we went and we cut his hair. I think he felt satisfied and supported by his dad and his mom. We were okay with the long hair. Didn't really like it, but the truth be told, it was okay. I gave him a point of rebellion where he could rebel. Now, I want to tell you that that was my brilliance and that I came up with it. But just like the proverb says, it's a good thing to have a wise wife. You'll find that in Proverbs 17, by the way. My wife was pretty wise in those days, and she said it's not going to hurt anything for him to have long hair. She said, "I just hope he keeps it clean." I paid attention, didn't I? So I went and we had a conversation that I don't like your long hair, but I do ask you a favor, just keep it clean. And he did. But there were some other areas of his life that we had parameters like this. You're going to go to church. You're going to be there on time. You're going to be polite to people. You're going to be nice. And you're going to be lovely and kind. He was all those things. He just had long hair in the process. Choose the rebellions that your children are going to have. It's really a wise thing. Now, I know there's probably some rebellions that my children had. They could get on here. They may want to comment on this video and tell about some rebellions that they had that I didn't know about. That may be true, but I have found over the years, I probably knew about 90% of them, and they didn't know that I knew. And I might have looked the other way on some of those. It really didn't hurt. But in those other areas, we had some conversations. As they grew through teenage years, we got into the years of college. I wish that somebody could have told me and prepared me for the years of college, because I'm telling you, college ages were a lot different. They didn't think they needed discipline from mom and dad. Mom and dad knew that they did, and so we had to transform some of our discipline into conversations, moments when we could pounce, I guess, if you will, and we could have those conversations without having them heated, although there were some times that they were heated. But we did come to a point, Laura and I, when we realized that our children had reached an age that we could not discipline them as far as correcting their behavior. We could not tell them no and have them fulfill and follow that, because they had reached adulthood and they had to make their own choices. We also had to come to a point of realizing that their choices were going to be their choices. We gave them all of the opportunities growing up over how to pick right from wrong. We gave them opportunities how to recognize the shiny things that the world would offer that would really hurt them, and those things that they could delay and they could work hard for down the road. So now we had to sit back and we had to depend on a couple of things. First, we had prepared them as best we could. Second, and the most important, we had prayed for this moment all of their life, and we had to trust. Number three, God knew what he was doing in their life. He always does. And that God ultimately would guide them and would lead them in their processes. I wish I could tell you that my college-age kids made all the right choices that I would have chosen. A lot of times they didn't make the right choices. A lot of times they didn't make the choices I made. Sometimes they made better choices than I made, and I realized that they did pretty good. As they grew into getting married and starting to have children, we found that parenting changed just a little bit. Discipline for them was not about telling them no. It was about being there to listen. It's about being there to offer advice when they asked for it, or when we felt like the little nudge of advice was necessary and they may want to listen to it. It's a different kind of day and it's a different kind of age. We've also changed into something else that I think is wonderful. Because when our children were little, I was not their friend. I was not their pal. I was not their buddy. Oh, we did recreation things together. We had a lot of fun. We had a lot of laughter. But I was not going to be their buddy, their pal. I also was not going to be one that was going to live vicariously through them. Well, I really couldn't. All of my children were better athletes than me. All of my children are smarter than I am. all of my children have a better personality and all those things than I did. So I didn't have to live through them. I got to live in awe of them. And now that they have become adults with their own children, I stand back and I get to be their friend. Now I get to be their friend. And it's really a wonderful thing. It's really fun for me, and it's fun for their mom to be able to get the phone call and us have a little bit of fun, us to be able to joke around and laugh. And yeah, it's a lot of fun to sit back and watch a meltdown by a grandchild in front of my child, and I get to watch them handle it a lot of times the way I would have. Sometimes I find they've handled it better than I would have. That's what discipline's about. It's about a legacy. You know, I was passed this legacy from my father and my mother. They weren't perfect. They didn't do all the right things with me. They were passed a legacy from their mom and dad and from their mom and dad. They didn't do all the right things either, but they learned and they picked the best of the best and they began to process through. And I hope that's what we've done, is that we've passed on the best things, and they're passing on the best things to my grandchildren, who one day I think will pass on the best things to my great-grandchildren. You know, discipline is important. The Bible talks about discipline. In fact, the Bible talks about how important it is to discipline yourself. But I want you to consider this. The Bible also says that God comes and disciplines those He loves. He loves you, therefore He disciplines you. So discipline is about love. It's about the process of love and sharing of love with one another. Thank you for letting me drop in on this just kind of brief moment and be able to share this with you. You know, I want to thank our sponsor, Disney Lane, and their great house down in the Orlando area. And if you're looking for a place to stay, you can find them on Airbnb. Look up Disney Lane. They're in the Davenport area. It's a great place. If you can't find them, send me a message down here. So do me a favor and click subscribe and click share and spread the word out and let other people know that this little crazy thing is out there. And it's been a joy to come to you on this Newman Family Zoo. What a great time. What a great blessing. And thanks for welcoming to the world the perfect little number 10. Oh, Charlotte Ann. She's a sweetie.
Good roll, good roll.